Good morning, Chuga Pies. How we doing? How we feeling? Happy New Year to you. Happy 2018. And I would like to take this time to welcome you to PJs and Coffee Time. So at this particular moment, I ask you to pause your video, go make yourself a cup of coffee, hot chocolate, wine, tea, the hard stuff, cold beer, whatever floats your boat. And a lot of that will be determined by what time of day you're actually watching this video. Well, right now it's Sunday morning. It's actually not as early as I would like for it to have been, but it is Sunday morning and I'm having my first coffee of the day, and I'm drinking it out of a 2005 Jetson Rocket coffee mug, which, as you all know, I've been busy working on my house, and this is a coffee mug that I pulled out of my cabinet. Okay, don't go out of focus. I did pull this out of the cabinet when I was pulling all my stuff out of the cabinet. This is a mug from my son's high school. He graduated as a Jetson Rocket in 2005, and on the back of this mug it has all the graduates of 2005. Needless to say that it's in very small writing, but you guys know I am a mug connoisseur and I love coffee mugs, and since I'm starting the series called PJs and Coffee Time, I thought I would try to, you know, maybe come up with a different mug every Sunday. And by the way, this will be taking place every Sunday morning that is possible. That is, I will sit down in front of this camera and do a very quick, let's not say quick, I will do a video based on something. I'll go into the details in another video, but basically on Sundays we will have some chat time, coffee and PJs time. So as you can tell, I am wearing my PJs. These are actually this is actually a nightshirt that was my mother's, so it's very dear to me. Whenever I would go home, there was something about taking my mom's night clothes, because my mother had every type of PJ, nightgown, nightshirt possible, and I kind of inherited that little like thing from her. I have a lot of them myself. I love getting comfortable after work, but this was one of my mother's favorites, which made it one of my favorites. And so when my mother passed away, I decided that I was not going to take all of her stuff, because obviously I couldn't, but we did donate a lot of it to shelters and things like that. But I did decide that I wanted to at least have one of her PJs. And so sometimes when I'm feeling a little like sad, or I miss my mom, or I just need some extra love, I throw on this PJ, so, or nightshirt I should say. So this being my first PJ and Coffee Time, I thought, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and put this particular one on, because I think it'll give me like a warm and fuzzy feeling on the inside. And you know, it's just, I don't know, it just gives me that extra oomph. So all of that being said, let's go ahead and get to talking. So the title of this video, I don't know where I'm going to put this at, as far as is this going to be on my thumbnail or what, but basically the other night I was over at my son's house and we were just talking about things that people don't realize when they ask you or they say to you how it influenced you. And we touched bases on a couple of subjects, and one of the subjects I'm going to talk about today is why I didn't go to college. Now, some of you may or may not even know that, not that it's relevant to anything that I do on YouTube, or actually relevant to what I do as a profession, but it is a question that I've been asked a lot. And not only have I been asked a lot about why did I go to college, but also when people find out that I didn't go to college, then they have these crazy questions for me, or I've been called some pretty weird things for not have gone to college. So that being said, I wanted to just kind of touch bases with you all and start from a very young age in my life and carry you on through now. So I grew up in a very small town. You all know that I constantly mention my small town that I grew up in. And basically, I believe that there's a part of you that know what direction you're going to go in at a very young age in life. And I grew up going to my grandmother's for my babysitter. My mother did work outside the home, but she worked in she worked in a restaurant for many years. And as you all know, my mother had rheumatoid arthritis, so she started having problems shortly after I was born. And then as time progressed and during most of my childhood, she suffered dearly. She had a lot of things that happened to her which caused her to have to stop work. But that was by the time I got into my teen years. But basically, I grew up going to my grandmother's, who was a stay-home grandmother and had been a stay-home mother because they had a farm, and she took care of the kids and did all the farm's wifey stuff while my grandfather did all the farming stuff. So I came from an environment where there was a lot of love and a lot of like close-knit familyness, which I think is part of why I made the decisions that I made. I remember being in 6th grade, and my 6th grade teacher, Miss Wilson, I'll never forget her. She taught my sister, she taught my brother, and now she was teaching me. We had to do a book report on what we wanted to do when we grew up. And I remember sitting down, thinking days before the book report was going to be due, like, what do I want to write this book report about? And I thought hard, and my sister was in college, my brother was in college at this time, and I'm thinking as hard as I can, like, I'm like, gosh, I don't know. Like, my sister had, these dreams of, like, she used to always say, I'm leaving home and never coming back. So when she left off to go to college, she literally never came back. My brother, I don't know, he never really voiced at that particular time in my life. He had not voiced like what he wanted to do. I just knew he was off to college, and he'd come home on the holidays and sometimes on the weekends. But I couldn't think of like a profession. Like, I couldn't think of, like, I didn't have any desire to be, anything. Like, I was just like, what's wrong with me? So I sat down to write my paper, and I thought to myself, I'm gonna write it what I really feel, because the only thing that I thought, and honestly at that time in my life, I didn't know that, well, not that it is bad. I'm about to say I didn't know that it was gonna be bad. I didn't know that it was gonna cause so much conflict, I guess. But I used to dream about being a mother and a wife, and like having like the life that my grandparents had, the life that my parents had, have a loving husband, a loving family. And that was really what was inside of me. Like, that's what I envisioned. Outside of the fact that I would have these visions about me carrying a Louis Vuitton purse, because I used to see this in a magazine, and I would always think, one day I'm gonna have one of those, and I'm gonna walk the streets in New York and be like Miss Thing. That's another whole video. So I wrote my paper, and I remember standing in front of the class, and I read my paper, and I will never forget, Miss Wilson sat there with her finger on her nose like this, which is what she often did, and she'd tap her nose, and I read my paper, I sat down, and when class ended, she called me up to her desk, and she said, I taught your sister, I taught your brother, and now I'm teaching you. Let's get something straight. You want more from your life than to be a housewife and a mother. And I remember looking at her like, okay, I do. Like, I was confused. I was in the 6th grade. Like, I'm like, well, I don't have any other desire at this point. And she said, well, you need to be more. You need to go to college. You need a college education. You need to make something of yourself. And I remember thinking, well, why isn't being a wife and a mother making something of myself? But again, I was young. I didn't know. Well, as time would have it, I went to high school. I ended up dating, which was my high school sweetheart, my husband, my son's father. And I still had no desire. Like, I really didn't have like this corporate world in mind. I didn't have like, oh, I need to be a teacher, a lawyer, a doctor. I just didn't. And when I was dating my son's father, we would talk about things like what we wanted to do. Like, he wanted to join the military. I was going to be a stay-at-home wife and a mother. Like, that's what we discussed. And so, needless to say, well, by the time I got to be a senior, my best friend at the time, which is still my best friend, I see her almost every time I go home. But she and I kind of like we kind of got in this idea that we might want to live together for a while. And so, because we were together all the time and we could not imagine not being together. So we were like, we're gonna have to live together when we get out of high school. And not knowing how all this, it's like one of those things, it's like a fantasy thought, because like, how is all, like, I'm gonna get married, we're gonna live together. Like, we were just being, you know, silly, I guess. But then she decided that she was going to go to business school. And I thought, well, you know what? I think I'm gonna do that too. Like, I'm gonna follow my friend. Because even though my high school sweetheart and I had discussed, like, you know, these are the things we wanted, we didn't have at this particular point, like, we didn't have a concrete plan. And this was like the beginning part of my senior year. So Charlene and I would discuss like all these things about like, oh, we're gonna move in together, we're gonna go to Richmond, Virginia, we're gonna go to this business school, blah, blah, blah. So as time had passed, we were about to graduate from high school, and my then boyfriend was making plans, thinking about, like, you know, he's gonna, you know, like, when does he want to just go into the military. And so the decision had been made. We got engaged like towards the, like, I want to say like right at the end of high school is when we got engaged, like right after high school. I can't remember exactly the time frame, but somewhere in there. And he made the decision that he wanted to join the military. And so I had said, well, I'm going to go to business school with my friend Charlene, which moving to Richmond was the thing to do. From our small town, there wasn't a lot of options. Like, you know, like, it's like that was the closest city. So if you wanted to take like that little tiny step away from your family, that's where everybody went. There were some people that took off way far away, but most of the people would just go like to this next little town. Well, not next little town, but the next city, which would be Richmond. So we had started to make our plans to do so. And through all of that, my, you know, then boyfriend or fiance was off in the military, did his basic training and all that stuff. Well, then we found out that he was not going to be, we thought he was going to be stationed in Baltimore. So we were like, oh, this is great. You know, we're going to be, you know, we'll be so close enough that we can, you know, visit back and forth, because we were thinking like get married in a year. Well, all of that changed one day, and we realized that he was not going to be stationed there, that he was going to be stationed in Alamogordo, New Mexico. Okay, where is Alamogordo, New Mexico when you grow up in Virginia in a small town? So that seemed like forever away. And the thought of him and I not being together every day for the rest of our lives was just not going to happen. I could handle being away from him if I knew that I could drive to see him on the weekends. But we were like, we can't be away from each other where we're miles and miles and miles apart, states apart even. So we were just like, you know what? You know, he said, let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and get married. Okay, sorry about that. A couple things happened. My battery died. And then it's actually a little bit chilly in here. I'm kind of contemplating on starting a fire, but I know that it's probably going to warm up today, so maybe not. So I have my little trusted blanket wrapped over my legs, and I heated up my coffee some more because, of course, my coffee was getting cold as well. And I just want to say, if you do see me looking down, I did end up jotting down a few notes, because I know sometimes I get off on a little tangent because things get very dear to me at times. And so I wanted to kind of like try to stick to my script, so to speak. Not technically, because you guys know I'm not a script type of a girl. I do like to freelance like pretty much anything that I do, because it's me. Like, it's more me. I can't sit here and be like this person, like, you know, this and this when it comes to my blogging or my videos or anything of that nature. So let's get back to where we were before we were so rudely interrupted by all those minor interruptions. So getting back to when my fiance and I decided that we wanted to go ahead and get married, that we didn't want to be apart, and I had to make the decision to tell my best friend that I wasn't going off to business school with her. And honestly, I thought she would be so much more upset than what she was, but her words to me was, I know you guys love each other, and I think you guys are gonna have a happy life, so you do you. And so, you know, we hugged each other, and she went her way and I went mine. Well, of course, there were some few other things that had to happen from this decision that we were gonna get married and I wasn't going away to business school. First and foremost, let me stop here and give, I don't want to call it an explanation, but I do want to explain that this video is not meant to offend anyone, any of our college graduates out there, or defend not going to college versus going to college, because it really it really isn't for me to decide one way or the other, nor is it anyone else's decision to decide one way or the other than the person that is involved. And that is the preference of this video. Like, I am a person who suffered a great deal from comments being made, from judgments being passed, and I'm voicing my opinion. And so that's basically what this is. I'm sharing, I'm voicing my opinion on why I feel like no one should make that decision for anyone else. And I'm also sharing what I really went through and what actually I still feel that I go through at times, even now, many, many years past. So if you are someone that's in school, good for you. I'm so proud of you. If you're doing it because that's what you want to do, then that's the greatest thing in the world for you. But if you're going because it's the cool thing to do, or you're looking for a purpose in life, like you feel like you have no purpose, so you're going to go off to school and try to make a purpose, or and you're not really serious about it, then who are you kidding? So I'm saying this to say that it's not a joke. It's an expensive thing, and it affects a lot of people around you. So making your decision to go to school should be a decision that you make based on what you really want to do in life, not just because people around you are making you feel like you should go, or there's something wrong with you if you don't go. Because I was one of those people that people made me feel like I was basically an idiot because I didn't go. And for a while it affected me, and I allowed it to bring me down in many, many ways, which you will hear about very shortly. So please understand, if you're a young person and you happen to be watching this video and you're trying to make that decision, and I know it's a very hard decision, because when you come from, like, I have a brother and a sister both that went to college. My parents did not. My parents were not educated people at all. In fact, my father had a 3rd grade education, and my mother had a 6th grade education. So they were young people living in the country, and my father had to stop and work because the family needed the money, and my mother was unable to continue to work because the school was an 8-mile walk for her to get to school from where they lived. And my mother was unfortunately born with a rheumatoid arthritis situation, and so it was just not feasibly possible for her. She would have pains and she would ache. And then also the family, there were 12 kids in her family, and that wasn't a priority at that time. Now, coming from two people that put their time together, barely would have made it to graduate if you added their time together. Like, they would have just been, basically at graduation point of high school. But one thing that I did learn from them, that it doesn't take a high school education. It doesn't take a college education to raise a family. It doesn't take a college education to make a home. And it doesn't take a college education to be intelligent and smart. Now, my father, no, he couldn't read, but I didn't even find that out until later on in life. His ability to memorize things was unbelievable. My mother, I would watch her read the Bible because that was her form of educating herself and making herself more knowledgeable in the lesson of reading. So she chose to read the Bible. And I can remember helping her with words that she couldn't pronounce, but it never dawned on me that at any point that my parents were stupid or that my parents were uneducated. I just thought I had the greatest parents in the world, that they were making something of themselves. And it never dawned on me to call them out of their name or to think of them as less people because they didn't go to college or that they didn't have even a high school education. So when I say these things, I'm talking to you that a decision to, when you make decisions in life, they need to be your decisions. And when I made the decision not to go to college, it was my decision. And I wreaked havoc from family members, from other people about my decision. So I'm saying all of this because I want people to understand what you do to people when you make comments like the comments that you make, or when people assume that they know your story, like they know your life better than you. So let's go back into the story, shall we? So the time came that I had to tell my family. Now, my parents, honestly, they never they were excited. They were excited that I wanted to be married. They loved my then fiance. We grew up together. Our families went to church together. My father had a gospel group. So my then fiance was like family. So it was not a bad thing to them. It was a great thing. My brother, I don't think he ever really had like a true opinion. Like he never voiced it to me. Like he just was like going with the flow. Like if this is what sis wants, you know, hey, it's what sis wants. But boy, when I went to tell my sister, that was a tough one. I understand now, but at the time that I told my sister that I didn't want to go to college, that I was getting married, I don't know which part affected her the most, that I didn't want to go to college or that I was getting married, because she had a reaction to both of them. The not wanting to go to college, she was like, what are you going to do with your life? And I said, I'm going to be a wife and I'm going to be a mother someday. He's joining the military. We're going to make a life of ours, and this is what we want to do. And I apologize. I can tell that the sun's going down, or like it's getting cloudy outside. So now it looks like my lighting is getting pretty bad. So I apologize. The sun's doing craziness and I'm doing this on natural daylight. So I apologize. But so my sister, I just remember her, we were driving in the car and I remember her turning to me and she looked at me and she said, you know, you will never be anything, don't you? And I said, well, I don't understand. And I remember hearing the words of Miss Wilson, and I'm thinking, what is it with people that think that you have to go to college to be something? What defines, like, what gives them the right, you know? And so she was just very upset. And then she's like, and why are you getting married? You're too young. Okay, well, again, that's another subject that I will talk to you all about. Because is there an age limit on when you should get married? Is there an age limit on when you should fall in love? Is there? Good question, right? So anyway, I remember feeling very hurt. And I remember she went along with it. Even on our wedding day, I just remember her just not being very happy. She was obviously my maid of honor, but she was not very happy. She did not approve of what I was doing. But because, my parents were my biggest supporter, she was like, she had to do what she had to do, I guess. And so we got married. The military life for us was wonderful. I was a stay-home wife. And 3 years later, we had our son, and I was a stay-home mother. And at a point, I decided that I wanted to go to work because I wanted some distance between my son and myself, because I felt like he and I were like so close that it was becoming dangerous. That, like I ate, breathed, and slept my son. Like and he the same with me. So I thought, I'm gonna work part-time, and that's gonna separate us a little bit and give us some time to grow in different directions, and let him be around other children and things of that nature. So I made those decisions. And then but every time we would move anywhere, or I would always initially stay home, and I would set our family up, and I would do the things that were needed for our family. Now, when I was around my military friends, I never really felt any issues. I never really felt like I'm a bad person, because in the military world, there were a lot of stay-home wives, and there were a lot of people that chose the military versus college, because let's be frank, not everybody is college material. And my ex-husband at that time that was not something he wanted to do. So he joined the military. And so life was great. I didn't have many worries. But whenever I would go home around my family, my sister especially, she would always have questions for me. And she always questioned my every move. Like, she questioned my finances. She questioned like what we had. Like, we didn't have a house. We lived in military housing. And I was like, but we have a beautiful home. Like, the military provides that for us, and she could never get it. Like, she would constantly make comments, and it was just really hard for me. And so whenever I was around her, I always felt less than. It was until one morning that my brother-in-law and I were sitting down for coffee, and my sister was still upstairs. And by this point, my son had been born, and I was now a mother, and I had gone home to see my family. And it was actually, my son was about 4 or 5. No, he was 5, because that was when his father was away on a remote assignment, and he and my son and I had gone home. Well, my brother-in-law made me feel so great. We had a conversation about the person that I had turned out to be, and his admittance to how he felt about me getting married and not going to college. He admitted that he was also very upset, and he also didn't understand. But that as he saw me as a wife and a mother, he realized that that was what I really wanted to do. And he wanted to compliment me on what I was doing as a wife and a mother. That he was very proud of the person I had become. I remember feeling very teary-eyed. I was like, oh my God, finally someone gets it. Like, if only my sister would get it. And he said to me, he says, Joyce she'll get there. But he explained something to me that made me understand a little bit better why she felt the way she did. We grew up in a small town, and my sister, being a black female, at the time that she made the decision to go to college, that was something to be heard of. That meant something big. And in her mind, because she struggled, to pay for college and to go, and that it was one of those things that's such a privilege that who would not want to do it. She didn't understand that as time had changed, that my life coming along years later, that maybe that wasn't a priority. It wasn't such a big deal. Like, it was okay to have other choices in life. But for her, that was the only choice she could possibly see that would get her out of the life that she was living, which in her mind was not a good life. She didn't like growing up in the country. She didn't like having parents that were uneducated. She didn't like that lifestyle. Now, my sister and I are very different. My sister was a very, 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 very smart person. Not that I wasn't, but things came naturally to her. She was considered a gifted and talented person. I was considered an average person. So for her, I think she felt confined when she lived in the small town. She felt, it was at a time that people didn't just go out and do things like they do now. So you were very limited to what you could do. So going off to college was her big escape. It was her way out of this horrible life that she was living. And so that's why she put so much emphasis on the fact that I needed to go to college, because she felt like I needed that same outlet. But what she didn't realize is that I didn't need that same outlet. The outlet that I had was enough. Like, I just wanted to be a wife, a mother. I wanted to come home and see my family and love my family. I didn't want this whole separation thing away from my family to where, like, I needed this whole other life outside of my family. So, he and I had that conversation, and okay, legs are falling asleep again. He and I had that conversation, and okay, I gotta get comfortable. And it really put things in perspective for me. So then I began to not really be so uptight around my sister, but just, it gave me a sense of ease, a sense of understanding. So fast forward, my marriage didn't work out. I ended up getting divorced. Now, there's a lot of factors that can come into play from that, because of course I heard them all. Had I gone off to college, I would be able to take care of myself. But because I didn't go to college, what are you going to do now? You focus on being a wife and a mother. What are you going to do now? Well, I'm going to be a working mother now, because I can do it. I just didn't make that decision to go to college and be a working person. I chose to be a stay-home wife and a mother. But now I'm going to work. And honestly, before my divorce, I saw things happening, and I had already began to make preparations to bettering myself, or figuring out a way that I was going to be able to take care of myself in the event that my marriage did not work out. And so I did have a job. I chose a job, the job that I had. I made decisions to try to improve my position, my title. I worked my way from the bottom, literally, not to the top, but from the bottom to a comfortable, mediocre area, to where I was not a high paid person, but I was able to take care of my son. I was able to provide a roof over his head. I was able to give him food, clothing. I gave him everything that he needed. Now, did I have a huge bank account? No, I did not. But guess what? There are a lot of college educated people that don't have huge bank accounts. So having a college education wasn't going to give me a bank account. It wasn't going to necessarily put a roof over my head. It wasn't going to necessarily buy my son's clothing or feed him. So I still felt pretty good about myself. But there were still times that I would feel a little bit intimidated. I felt like, gosh, like I hear these comments and, what's a person to think? Well, of course, now I'm in a different world. I'm not around the military on a daily basis like I had been. I'm around the job that I had. I was around a lot of people that had chosen to go to college, but I was also around a lot of people that had not made the decision to go to college. That this was one of those jobs that you could actually get into and you could work your way up from the bottom and have a pretty decent position and salary when all is said and done. So I had like a mixture of both worlds. So I never, in my immediate job world, I never had like a bad reaction. We kind of like went back and forth. Like I said, there were some kids that were doing this job as they were going to college, and some of them were people that just, like I said, they chose this profession because you could work your way up from the bottom to the top. But it was dealing with the people on the outside world, the people that I was meeting now that weren't military, and how they looked at people that didn't go to college. And sometimes you would be in a room and you'd be having a conversation with people that were college graduates, and for some reason, if the subject came up, and it wasn't that I hid it from people, but I always knew that if the subject came up, they would probably say something or give me some look or, have some kind of comment, because I think a lot of people just assumed that I went to college because of the position that I had. And so, I'd be like, well, no, I didn't go to college. You didn't? Why? And, just comments, well, you need to go to college. You need to go to school. And I was like, well, for starters, I can't afford it. And also, I'm a single mom raising my son. I don't have a desire to do that. I want to give him the best life I can, yes. But I don't see that the best life I can give him is going to be through me going to college. It's going to be through me working right now, putting a roof over his head, and giving him everything that he needs to be a better person in his life. So needless to say, I got into some serious conversations with many people at many different times. But one conversation I had with someone, and this happened several years later, and I really had to really work hard at not, how do I put this, and it not come out wrong. I had to really work hard at not being angry at people that went to college when they made comments. I had to place myself in a situation to where, like, I really sat down one day and I really thought about it, and I was like, I think that because I'm a thinker and I'm a watcher. Like, I sit back and I observe a lot of things that are going around, and what I noticed was a lot of the people that had the most opinion, the most comments to be said to me, were the people that had gone to college, but they weren't using it, or they were struggling probably worse than me. And so I think there was some resentment on their part towards me, because how dare me to be somewhat successful and not have a college education? How did I manage to do that? Well, I didn't make fun of you. I didn't call you names. I allowed you to do your decisions, which I felt like they should allow me to do mine, but they didn't. But that also, like I said, I had to learn to understand, to forgive, I guess, in a way, and not, and not let it affect me. Although at times it still would affect me. I still struggled. But one time in particular, I remember I was having an argument with a person, and it was a very close relationship. And for some reason, I realized, well, how do I put this? For some reason, this person had this inner feeling that they never shared with me about me not having a college education. But in this argument that we had, those feelings came out. And I was called dumb, I was stupid, and I was uneducated. And I remember the words went so deep, and it cut me like someone had just taken a knife and stabbed me in my heart. Anger filled my body like you would not believe. And then I became very defensive, but not just so much for me, but for my mother and my father. And I was like, so basically, not only, like, I graduated from high school. I have a, high school education. I work a decent job. I basically live a better life than you do, who have your college education. My mother and my father worked their butts off to give me the life that they did, and they didn't even graduate from high school. They didn't even get out of elementary school. So how dare you to sit here and say those words to me? It hurt like you would not believe. And it took me a long time to get over it. And it took me a long time and to be able to even talk about it without getting teared up with anger. Not just anger, just like how dare you? And even to this day, because as I sit here and I talk about it, I know that it still affects me, because when my son and I were talking, my daughter and I were talking the other night, we were talking about things that people say to each other or other people, and they don't realize how it affects them, or they don't know, like they just say things, or they just assume things. And so now I'm in a better place in my life where I'm proud of the person that I am. Not that I never was proud. I was always proud. But now I say it with comfort. I say it with ease. And even though I can get angry from the comments that were being made, like when I think about it now, I look at them and I feel sorry for them. And I know that I made the right decision for myself. I didn't make it for anybody else. Even as I sit here now, people have said to me, well, why don't you go back to school? And I look at them and I say, because I don't want to. That's why. I don't want to go to college. I didn't want to go 20, 30 years ago, and I don't want to go now. I am okay. Like, I have no desire to do this. Let me be me, and I will let you be you. Now, I do have friends that decided later on in life that they were going to go back to school and that they were going to seek that college education. But most of them, or some of them I should say, that's what they wanted to do before, but obstacles got in their way, whether it was finances. Some of them, had a family before they planned and they just never got to go, and so now they have the opportunity to go, so they're going. Some of them are going because it allows them to get a position where they work, which is great if that's what they want to do. Key words, what they want to do. And so I think for me, and like I said, the real purpose of me wanting to do this video is having that conversation with my son, and how important it is for people to understand that when you make decisions in life to do the things that you do, whether they are what everyone's doing, whether they're what no one's doing, the decisions should be yours. And for those people that feel that if you don't go to college, and especially now, like, it's funny because now I see young mothers now where they are wanting to be stay-home moms, and some of them go to college and then they got caught up in the world of that they should go to college, and then they get married and they decide that they want to be stay-home mom. Now, I'm not saying that that's wrong, but I think some of them probably wanted that from the beginning, but they just didn't want to disappoint their families, or they didn't want to disappoint the world, and so they made these decisions to go. And you have to wonder, like, why do you have to make a decision based on what other people want? Why don't you just make the decision based off of what you want? So I guess that's basically, you know, that's just how I feel. And I wanted to share that with y'all because some of you probably watching this video have no idea that I never went to college. Because I do talk to people sometimes and they were like, oh my gosh, I thought you did. Like, and they say it sometimes and it's so funny because they say it like, oh wow, like, ooh, you seem a little bit more intelligent than you know. And I'm like, yeah, same person. Doesn't make a difference, does it? But you know, so a couple of things. If you're a person, you happen to be watching this video and you're trying to make that decision, do I go to college? Do I not go to college? I don't know. My parents are telling me, my friends are doing it, whatever. Just make sure you give it some thought. Don't waste your money. Don't waste your parents' money. Don't waste your time. Don't waste your parents' time. Don't waste the professor's time. Just make sure it's something that you want to do. And if you're a person that feels that if a person don't go to college, they will never make anything of themselves, rethink those thoughts. You're entitled to your thoughts. I totally agree. I'm not here to change your thoughts, but just give it some good heart-to-heart thinking, because really and truly, shouldn't it be the person that's making that decision? Shouldn't it be their decision to go or not go? And when you see someone in your life that hasn't gone and you are a college graduate, don't be too quick to judge, and don't be too quick to assume that they are not educated or they're stupid or they don't have a purpose in this life, because everyone has a purpose and everyone has a calling. There's something in everyone, and one's calling may not be another person's calling, but everyone has something that they were meant to be, or that they're good at, or that they just want to do. And it should be okay for everyone, anyone, to be who they want to be. I am finding now at 52 years old, like I said, I'm very comfortable with who I've become. I'm very comfortable at the fact that my son's in college now. He was in the military, got out of the military, went to college. He's married, has a son. He's still in school. He's got a good job. He's doing it at his own pace, at the way he wanted to do it. He tried going to college before he did the military. He didn't like it. And by the way, I didn't tell him he had to go to college. I didn't force that on him. I gave him the choice of, you tell me, son, what it is you want to do, and I will be your biggest support. One of the things that he said to me the other night was how proud of me he was that I didn't force anything on him. And throughout his entire life, I've always let him have a voice and let him be what was important to him. Now, don't get me wrong, there was guidance along the way. He didn't just get to fly by night and be, homework had to be done and normal things had to be done. But decisions that I knew would affect the rest of his life, I didn't make them for him. And nor do I ever plan to make them for him. So that's a food for thought. And, I don't know, it's one of those things that it's a tough decision on which way to go, because society can lead you one way, society can lead you another way, and there's just so many different things out there. So for each and every one of us, anything that we decide to do in life, and especially something that's going to affect the rest of our lives, we need to make sure that we make it based on what we feel is right. And again, I could say it 1,000 times, we only get one life, and we need to give it everything we have and be the best person that we can be, whether it's doing whether it's going to college, whether it's getting a trade, whether it's, just be able to take care of yourself. If you're not going to go to college, then seek that job, seek that place that you can work and give it everything that you've got, and try to, become whatever you can through that job, or, just make sure you're able to take care of yourself. Do it in a way that you can be comfortable with. I guess that's, if I could say anything to anyone, that's what I would say. So, I just shared a real talk time with you guys, dealing with my real life. And as I sit here in front of this camera, I want anyone to feel free to comment below. Only nice comments, people. Remember, this is a channel of love, laughter, and happiness. But I know that if this has affected me, I know that, you know, I'm sure I have college educated viewers. I'm sure I have non-college educated viewers. I'm sure I have stay-home mothers now, grandmothers, or maybe mothers, or anyone that are my viewers. Please feel free, you know, share any of your stories. How do you feel about college? Do you feel that, I mean, and if you feel that that is the way to go and there's no other choice, don't feel like you can't comment that below, because like I said, this is my opinion on it, and I know that everyone have their opinions. So feel free to comment below. Just remember that everyone has their opinion. You have yours and I have mine, and I'm going to respect yours and I want you to respect mine. So, but I did just want to share this with you all and make it a part of my PJs and coffee time, because it is something that has affected my life. And I went a long time feeling very unsure of myself, not feeling comfortable around my sister, not feeling comfortable around certain family members or certain friends, because I felt at some points that I was going to be laughed at, or, you know, comments were being made because I didn't go to college that would make me feel less than a person. And so it's very important to me that people understand that it's okay to be whatever it is you want to be. As long as you're able to take care of yourself, provide for yourself, it's okay, and you just do you. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys in my very next video. Bye.